So, for context, my fiancé was married to this guy for 5 years before meeting me. They got a divorce, and she and I started talking about a year and a half later, and then began dating. They have an 8-year-old boy together. He's a great dad, and they co-parent very well together. We dated for 4 years and got engaged. With that, my fiancé and I decided that we wanted to have a baby together. She got pregnant after 3 months, and we are absolutely over the moon. She wanted to wait until after 12 weeks to tell anybody, and we figured, before we go public, we should let the ex-husband know, as besides us, this will affect their child the most. He is very excited to be a big brother. He was pretty angry. He went off about how hurtful it was that we decided to do something this life-changing without even talking to him about it, and how it will affect their son and their family. He said we needed to talk to him, and that there needs to be communication about this kind of stuff. I cut in there and told him we were communicating with him right now, and that it felt like he was saying we needed to get his permission. This seemed to irritate him, and he kind of stormed out of the apartment. My fiancé was very upset after this, and I comforted her for about an hour. I'm really not sure why he reacted this way, but I almost suspect that he had hoped that they would maybe get back together at some point. He hasn't dated one time in the almost 6 years they've been divorced. Maybe I'm wrong, but his reaction just seems off to me. I don't know what your guys' opinion would be as to how I could have handled this better. Should we have talked to him before we started trying? That honestly sounds ridiculous to me after typing that, but I'm not sure of the proper etiquette for something like this. He has zero right to be asked permission for 2 grown adults to have a baby. This is not his baby, and therefore is not any of his business. I also suspect that you are right about his feelings towards your fiancé. That just seems like really odd behavior for someone who is divorced. I would watch for potential issues to arise with co-parenting, but hopefully not. A lot of people tend to be possessive, even when they don't want somebody anymore, and I'm sure part of him is upset she's really and truly done with him. There is probably some trepidation about this new family dynamic. Now you're not just his kid's stepdad, you're the father of his brother, sister, and that's going to be a big part of his son's life that has literally nothing to do with him. In short, his kid is getting a new family, and he isn't a part of it. There will be big events and milestones for his son that have nothing to do with him, and in fact, are none of his business. His son is going to be a brother, and that's a big deal. Adding you to his family was a much different scenario. Now you're starting your own family, and his son is part of it, and he isn't. It's absolutely acceptable for him to feel some kind of way about that. You and your soon-to-be wife have to learn to not make his problems yours. Tell him as politely as you please that you appreciate this is a difficult thing for him, but he wasn't asked, and it's not his business. Then you and your soon-to-be wife make damn sure you don't make his problem yours. You're co-parenting, not asking permission to live your lives as you see fit. And if you screw around and let him believe he gets a say in your life, you can skip the marriage and head straight to the divorce. Nobody gets to make decisions for your family, full stop. Basically, when it comes to things that aren't his kid, he can keep his opinions to himself, as you have no need for them. I seriously doubt this is about your significant other, though. He's going to be cut out of something that is a really big deal for his kid. You can be understanding without allowing nonsense. Karen, mother-in-law. Ben, brother-in-law. I love my husband, but unfortunately he came with the most insane, self-serving family I've ever met. In the entirety of the family, there have been so many instances of people taking advantage of each other, but this one just takes the cake. So Ben and my husband are very close. We all live together and have for some time, and we enjoy each other's company. We are all still in our early 20s, so some of our finances are still linked with our families. So this past month, a tree branch fell and shattered Ben's car's windshield and dented his roof, also cracked it. So he goes to file his insurance claim. He's been paying for full coverage since he got his car more than a year ago. He is on the same plan as Karen. Come to find out after a few calls, he does not have insurance. Karen decided to switch his plan to the cheapest possible option without informing him at all, and thus without his consent. And she let him keep paying the cost of his full coverage insurance that whole time. This doubled the cost. He was paying 2 times as much as he should have been the whole time. She just let him keep paying that amount and pocketed everything extra he was paying her. Now, if that isn't bad enough, now that she got caught, she can't afford to pay him back because she has bills to pay, and she refuses to pay for the damage, even though she took his coverage away. She makes $70K plus per year. We know this from scholarship info, lives with her parents at 40-something, and takes almost yearly trips to Europe. This is a brief record of the other things that have gone down within this family. Karen and her mother, the grandma, went into a yelling fit at my husband and I when we got engaged. Then even tried to conspire with my mother to break up our engagement. My mom gave her a hard no. Karen yelled at us about our choice to become foster parents and how it wasn't a real family. The grandma banned me from entering the house when we first started dating because she saw us cuddling on the couch. Yes, literally, just cuddling and watching TV. Karen removed Ben's door from his bedroom when he was a teen because he didn't want to talk to her. Gee, I wonder why. The uncle in the family at one point went to Ben's girlfriend's family to tell them that they shouldn't allow Ben to date their daughter and slandered Ben for seemingly no reason. When Ben, my husband, and I were at the fair for the evening, Karen demanded they come home immediately. Wouldn't give a reason why. It was only about 8 p.m. and they had purchased evening passes for the rides and said no. She threatened to call the police and say they were runaways, and when that didn't work, threatened to lock them out of their own house. We lived in a rental that the grandma owned for a while. They charged a very large amount for rent, more than we thought it was worth, but at that time, it was sort of our only option. Once we left, the rent magically dropped by $1,000. At this point, I'm ready to cut them out of our lives. Once we have children, my husband agreed they would not be involved with them at all. But after the insurance fraud and stealing from her own son, I want to take it a step further. Husband refuses and still wants us to go holidays and family events. I'm not okay with going anymore, and I told him there has to be a line drawn where they've gone too far. He refuses to draw any line and just says they're family. What should I do? What should or could Ben do about the stolen money? Ben should speak to a lawyer, but I'm skeptical that anything could be done. Ultimately, as an adult, it was on him to take responsibility for his insurance, meaning the policy was in his name and statements should have been mailed directly to him, and he should have been paying the insurance company directly. As for your husband, he needs to grow a spine and cut them off. Since he won't, tell him he'll be spending time with his family alone, because you're done. Your husband refused to set any boundaries because they're family. This is how he was raised, for better or for worse. There's nothing you can do to change his mind because he doesn't want to change his mind. This is why you need to set boundaries between yourself and your husband's family. This might mean having no contact with them. You could take the "you deal with your family, I'll deal with my family" approach. This means that you don't participate in any events with his family. This means that he doesn't have to deal with any events with your family. Fair is fair. The larger issue that you're going to face is what to do when you have children. You have every reason to worry about what could happen if his family has any contact with your children. This is where you need to talk to him about his family of origin and his family of desire. His family of origin made him. His family of desire is you and your children. You need to know that when push comes to shove, he'll always choose his family of desire over his family of origin. You should talk with your brother-in-law and sister-in-law and see if you can enlist them as your allies. Your sister-in-law is in the same boat as you, which means that you could form a two-person support group with her. Over the weekend, my 31 female, boyfriend, 31 male, and I had a huge fight. I came home on Friday night from a night out with friends, and he was 10 beers in. While he was intoxicated, he was saying some really weird things, wanting to have S with me, which was kind of scary, won't lie. But ultimately, he also said that he had been wanting to talk to me about getting engaged, married, and whether we should have a big wedding. He kept asking me to marry him as well, while drunk. I managed to get him to sleep and thought that I would get to talk to him the next day. So then on Saturday, he got up from the sofa where I put him and came into the bedroom where I was half sleeping and half awake. When I asked him, he couldn't remember any of what had happened the night before. I asked him if he remembered anything, specifically proposing. He said he didn't and wanted to talk to me about that. We ultimately went back to sleep. I put him back on the couch. And then we ended up talking a few hours later when we were a bit more rested. When we did get to talking again, I told him that while I did want to marry him someday, I didn't want to do it now. First of all, he owes me a lot of money. For the sake of length, I won't go into why I loaned him. We just had a huge fight stemming from his drinking, which was his first time in a long time, and we needed to go through what happened there and what he needs to do. However, he had also been talking to his family and wanted to see where I was with the idea of marriage. We took a break after that, and he wanted to go out to the mall for a bit. He told me he wanted to see what the market was like for engagement rings. I told him that I didn't want to know anything about the ring or a proposal because I wanted a surprise. I also asked him to not do two things that day. 1, he would not buy a ring that day, and 2, he would not propose. I met him later and we went for dinner, and ultimately, I found out that he did indeed buy a ring while he was at the mall. I got super upset because of the fact that he owes me money. He has to be reminded that his payments are due, and it seems that his priorities with money are skewed. On top of everything, I also explicitly asked him not to buy a ring. His argument was that he was always going to pay me back once he gets the settlement from his mother's estate. She passed away in December, and that it was coming. He decided to get the ring right away because he thought I would love it. He found a good deal, and he wanted to show that having a life with me was his priority. He was hoping that I wouldn't find out. I had a hard time with this because of the fact that I explicitly asked him not to buy a ring that day because he owes me money, which now I felt like I essentially bought an engagement ring for him to propose to me with, and because I honestly wanted a proposal to be a surprise when it happens. Once again, we talked all night, and he spent another night on the couch. We agreed that the ring would get returned. He would give me a payment scheduled for what he owes me, and he would hand over his credit debit cards to me so that he wouldn't be tempted to excessively spend more. On Saturday night, there was also a huge hailstorm which damaged his car. He didn't have any savings to fix it, and some of the damage was not covered by insurance. Hence, it solidified my ask to return the ring so that at the very least he could have cash to fix his windshield. On Sunday, he went to the mall and the ring was returned. We agreed that he would have a clean slate and that an engagement would be on the table. We worked out a timeline that would work for both of us. However, all decisions on when he would buy the ring and propose would be up to him, so long as he keeps up his end of the payment schedule he gave me and he continues to keep to his budget. For the most part, things are okay. However, I keep thinking through that I might have been hard on him, given that I know deep down that he really does want to have a life together, and I do too. I guess where I'm at is this. Is it such a big deal, and was I too hard on him? Ultimately, we both wanted the same thing, a life together. Should I have let him keep the ring, even though every time I would look at it, I would be reminded of this insane fight that we had? Money is important to me, and what haunts me now is that he may have to spend more on a ring in the future, or he would get ripped off when he tries again to buy a ring, when we could have used the money to build our future. You explicitly asked him not to do something, and then he went out and did it anyway, and somehow he's surprised that this is a problem. That's the big red flag here.